Welcome back, fellow armchair generals. This is Gamer 1745 here with my continuing playthrough of Hearts of Iron 3's Black Ice 10.41. I'm going to cough here for a second. Okay, we're going to continue. The first thing we're going to do here is organize the Gross Deutschland. We'll get the Elite Infantry Regiment Gross Deutschland. That means greater Deutschland. Don't know how gross. I think it's the German root word of great. As in large or bigger. Somehow, where's it grotesque? I don't know. I got to look that up. I'm interested in the, etymology, how words develop. Gross. Okay, so we will get this. First weekend, Hitler ordered that the Watch Regiment Guard unit that was created in early 21 to offset the threat of revolution. Renamed, yes, okay. So, removes Watts Truppen. And we'll get this. We'll see how this works. Now, in essence, I'm not saying it wasn't renamed. Let's look here quickly before we get rid of it in its entirety here. It's here somewhere, I do believe. Oh, here. Yeah. Watch Regiment Großdeutschland, Watch Truppen. There remained an element of the regiment up until at least sometime late in war. That's Manfentel. It's a fairly late war image, I believe. No, I'm seeing the half track. That's a mid-war half track style. So I'm not sure. But he sort of takes it over somewhat late, I think. There remains something of that until, near the end in Berlin. So we'll see what we get here. Maybe we just get to keep. That may disappear, though. Well, let's just click over here. There we are. Okay, so now we have the headquarters. Oh no, this is the headquarters. That's the Elite Infantry Regiment. Okay. It is motorized. So we will send that off over there. And we're going to do the Ribbentrop-Molotov pact. August 23rd, Hitler and Stalin signed a non-aggression pact called. Okay. Stupid things we do that are short-sighted. I know I've talked about it, and I'm sure I'll mention it again, that the big steel rolling machines, the Soviet Union did not have, to the best of my knowledge, did not have the ability to produce these big steel rolling machines. Because it takes precursor technologies to produce them, and they didn't have. And technology, they didn't have the industrial capacity. Could they have built the machines that built the machines that then built the big steel rolling machines or something? Yeah, probably eventually, but that would have taken a lot of time and cost a lot. So Germany sells them one or more big steel rolling machines. And I think because at the time, in the 1930s, not exactly sure the year. I mean, it's before this, I believe. But I do believe it's during the Hitler years in power. So after, 33. I think, like I said before, I think they're thinking in the terms of, they want to build battleships or just big ships armor. Because no one at that time really is looking at tank armors that are that thick. They're looking at, ship armors. And so, we'll sell you 2 or 4 or whatever the number of these steel rolling machines. We'll sell you that. And that allows them to build the T-34 and KV-1s, basically, to my knowledge, without those steel rolling machines. major elements of those tanks could not have been made the way they were made. I'm not saying they couldn't have made heavy tanks, but it's one thing to create a flat piece of steel. Normally you do have a steel rolling element there, most assured, as opposed to casting. But part of what it is to be able to bend it, I think, is the critical element of it. If you look at a Tiger 1 turret, it's sort of shaped in a horseshoe with a flat front on it where the gun mantlet is. And that's all one piece of steel, that horseshoe shape. You can see, I wish I was easier for, I could edit these things, but they take a lot of effort and alt-tabbing out and trying to find the photo. But someday when I'm making enough money to make it worth my time to edit this stuff, I can bring up an image of the thing being worked in a German steel rolling mill for the Tiger 1 turrets. But you get the idea. It's a big bendy single piece of huge thick steel. Okay, so it's not just rolling out something flat, you're rolling out the stuff that's bending it. That's the type of thing that Germany sells. The Soviets, from everything I understand, they couldn't have been building the heavy tanks that they did without them. Eventually, you look at the Joseph Stalin 1s and 2s. Those have huge cast steel turrets on them. Not sure, just they're just working the technology up, probably. And I'm not saying they couldn't have, oh well, hey, if you waited until 1945, in peaceful development of the Soviet Union, they wouldn't have been able to get to having those machines. It's not that they couldn't have, not that it's beyond the capabilities of Stalinistic Russia. It allowed them to do it a whole hell of a lot earlier and get the T-34s out there in time and the KV-1s out there in time to confront the Germans. Okay. This. Like I've said before, and I'm sure we'll talk about it again, while Ribbentrop is in Moscow talking to Molotov, there is a Franco-British team led by a British admiral, and I have to look all the stuff in which I have events for, that will be ported back, or is in the process of being ported back into TRE. Don't know how much you would see them as Germany, though, but that is in Leningrad, talking to some other element of the Soviet foreign ministry, trying to get an anti-Hitler alliance that will help defend Poland. The big thing that the Soviets asked the British and the French, well, what about these pesky, basically Baltic states? But I don't know. I don't know the details, and I don't know how much of the details have been published. And I wrote up the event. My memory doesn't remember all the details. But they were asking for what about sort of like Eastern Poland and definitely the Baltic states? And, well, they're independent countries. No, you don't get to just have them. Oh, installment. So you're not serious about this deal you want with us. You don't really want to deal with the devil. You want to, respect national sovereignties. Well, that's not what we're about. So these two things are going on at the same literal time. I don't know how much they knew about each other. I don't really think the Allied team knows about Ribbentrop. I don't know if the Germans know about, and maybe I've read. I just don't know what's known at the time, if they were well aware of the two groups. So I don't think the British realized that they were bidding against the Germans as to who's going to get the alliance. And so Hitler goes with Stalin goes with the Hitler alliance because Hitler will give up, or will let Stalin have, because Hitler's not giving up anything because he doesn't have them yet, will say that Finland, Estonia, and Latvia are in the Soviet sphere. Eastern Poland to, do we not have it on? I guess we don't have it on. Okay, I don't know historical plans. Okay, we need this on. Okay, the Vistula here. That's what I was looking at. This part of the Vistula, not this part so much, I don't think. But it's this, the Vistula here will roughly be the boundary set for occupation zones. Yes, we know that Warsaw was in the old Tsarist zone, but no, it's going to be this. And I think, I'm not sure exactly what was, and maybe somebody did post it recently, but some of the area here might have also been specified. But definitely Poland, definitely Finland, Estonia, and Latvia. Lithuania was going to be in the German sector. Now, the reason the Soviets occupy Lithuania is because Germany does fairly well, and they meet up here at sort of Brest-Litovsk, and the bug becomes, and which still basically is, to my understanding, look at a modern map, but becomes the eastern boundary of German occupation. So Germany gets this sort of section in here, somewhere around, I forget which, I think Lvov is in the Soviet area, and the Germans also sort of get this up here, but in trades for giving up Lithuania. Now, in my opinion, this is my opinion, and Hitler was something of a gambler, something of a person that believes that he's being guided by a higher power. I don't know if it's ever clear in Hitler's mind what he thinks the higher power is. I truly believe he comes to think that, and I'm sure he's believing it by the time he survives the assassination attempt. And I think surviving that assassination attempt gives Hitler some strange, continue to give Hitler strange delusional ideas of why that. I know I've talked about, somebody was posting that, Hitler finally admits defeat in World War II and Steiner can't relieve Berlin. Yeah, that he's been saved from all these different assassination attempts and been able to, as a basically penniless foreigner rise to the head of Germany, is that he's being guided for some great destiny. He comes to believe this. I don't know, at what point, how strongly, where, when he's believing this stuff. So how much of it is in his mind a gamble? How much of it is he's gambling? And how much of it is higher power directed? And I'll say he definitely gives orders, at least as far as I understand, that when the Germans reoccupy, or remilitarize, not reoccupy, it was earlier in 1935 they had reoccupied the Saarland down in here from the French, but they remilitarized the Rhineland when they were doing that in early 36. There was orders to pull back out if the French moved against them, because they were not ready for a war with France if France backed down. So this is a gamble. This is a gamble. And, what the hell does it mean? He's gambling. Okay, he comes across the border. He doesn't, but, the troops come across the border. He's like back in Berlin or somewhere. He's not up at he doesn't want to take ownership of this like he does the invasion of Austria and later invasion of Czechoslovakia, that he is very close following along with the troops. To the best of my understanding, Hitler, I'm not saying that there isn't eventually, Hitler's coming in here eventually as a, conquering hero, but he's not around during the time. So he doesn't want to own a, mistake here. So if the French were to come in, does that mean the French are at war with Germany? Not necessarily, but not necessarily not. You've broken the Versailles Treaty. What does breaking the Versailles Treaty mean? Oh, we're no longer at peace. We're now at war. That's sort of what it means, but it could just mean, oh, okay, yeah. You back off. We're going to go back to France, or maybe we'll occupy. Now, see, if Germany tries to come in here, and is turned back by the French, and the French, particularly the French, continued occupation of the Rhineland, that gives Hitler all kinds of blame the French for whatever's wrong. It's not me, it's the French. The French are being bad. Now, that's good so long as I think, and I don't know how it would have played out for sure, but I think it's reasonably good so long as there's no significant fighting, and there's just evil French occupation that probably isn't going to last very long. Now, if it's French troops battling and moving, to Berlin, it's probably not going to be good for Hitler. But if it's just military maneuvers, occupy it for a year or something, it could give Hitler a propaganda win against the French. So there's definitely a gamble aspect by all this, because otherwise he wouldn't have been so careful to have orders for the troops to fall back if if they moved against it. So he's definitely gambling. But Mussolini gives permission to come into Austria, basically. I don't know how explicitly, but basically, to some degree, prior to German occupation of Austria. Because remember, Mussolini has the three powers pact with them, Austria, and Hungary. That's an anti-Hitler pact. Well, we know by, by 38, that's starting to crumble after about 2 years of, 6 months or more of complete trade isolation and more diplomatic isolation by the Western powers for Italy. And Mussolini wanting to, knowing he wants to expand into other areas and realizing that the Western powers are not going to be happy with him expanding into places like Yugoslavia and Greece. Just not going to be happy with that. I don't know that Mussolini, what's Mussolini thinking when? But he's, I think, coming to the realization at some point that there's going to be round 2 of the world wars. And I think he wants to play it carefully. But if there's going to be a German victory, he wants to pick up some crumbs for himself. Because that's clearly what he does. Now, he mistakes a German tactical victory, defeating France, as being the strategic victory of winning the war. But that's another question. It's different perceptions at the time. So that's why I'm reading that into Mussolini. So Mussolini gives that permission. The Western Allies have allowed, and there was always, I think, the idea of eventual reoccupation of the Saarland in the Versailles Treaty, but I could easily see, 100 plus years of demilitarization of the Rhineland. So Hitler's already broken the Versailles Treaty there. Hitler, by, 37, 38, he's broken another part of the Versailles Treaty. Czechoslovakia had rights to use some of the German ports and and actually had one of the ports. I think it was Stettin. They weren't actively using Stettin up here, but like Hamburg or wherever, they actually had like an extraterritorial little enclave here. Just sort of like a largest dock area kind of thing, which they could load and unload ships and either put the cargo on river barges and come into Czechoslovakia, or put them into train cars and seal the train cars up, and they would get to run across. I think they have to pay the freight, and they have to pay the the river tolls or whatever. They'd have to pay those costs, but Germany couldn't look inside of the freight cars and couldn't charge them any duties for any import or export duties. It was just the cost of using the railways, and so it was like the ability for Czechoslovakia to trade with the rest of the world, and the rest of the world to trade with Czechoslovakia. And that was part of the series of Versailles treaties, if not in the original main Versailles treaty, because the one that ends, if I'm not mistaken, the one that ends America's war with Germany is not the Versailles Treaty, but the Saint-Germain-en-Laye Treaty, which Saint-Germain is another palace in that area near Versailles. And that's where the Americans were starting negotiating. That's the treaty that ends the war with the United States, because the United States, I don't believe, is a signer to the Versailles Treaty. It's the Saint-Germain Treaty. But those series of treaties, and there may have been other protocols there. That's so Hitler's breaking all these Versailles Treaty things that to give anybody, any Versailles victor nation, basically, excuse to go to war, including Czechoslovakia, who theoretically, he's breaking this before the Sudeten crisis is finally coming to an head, if I'm remembering it all correctly, the treaty ports situation. That would have been enough of an excuse for Czechoslovakia to go to war with Germany, if, say, France were to back them up, and maybe Poland and whatnot. Okay, so Hitler believes that the Western powers are not going to come to war over Poland because they didn't, not so much because they didn't over the Sudetenland. That's part of it, but it's because they didn't when Germany occupies the rest of the rest of Czechoslovakia. Basically, they didn't do anything. At least as far as I know, they didn't do a damn thing. So he thinks that it's just a bluff. So he's worried about the Soviet Union, primarily when it comes to Poland. I don't know what he's worried about, whether it's the Soviets coming to the aid of Poland, or whether it's the Soviet Union worried about Germans on the Soviet borders, or or what they would be worried about. But he's worried, and very, very rightly so. Because, you could have the Soviets come in there with not necessarily in the aid of Poland, other than some sort of rhetoric, but just basically coming to war. And Hitler ain't maybe as stupid as he looks, okay? Hitler realizes two-front war is not a good idea. He's read enough Frederick the Great and whatnot. He doesn't want a two-front war. He remembers World War I as well. I mean, he actually remembers World War I. Not only did he fight in it, he remembers it. So he doesn't want a two-front war, and that's what he's worried about. So that even if, because I truly believe he doesn't think the French will go to the war for Poland alone, and he doesn't think the British will fight over Poland. Because I think the calculation goes. So the French, I think he thinks would, because I think he thinks the French would have fought over Czechoslovakia if they had Britain's, wholehearted support. Not like, yeah, you can go to war. Yeah, we'll like, yeah, we'll have our Navy steam around out here, just to, that. But otherwise, it's your show, France. I mean, if it's that, half-hearted thing, he knows that. I think he believes the French aren't going to do it. And it was to the point that you remember that it was Chamberlain calling up Daladier. No, not Daladier. He's the French guy. Bernays, I think, Edward Bernays, or whoever, one of the Czech leaders, and saying, yeah, you better give in. Just give in on Sudetenland. We got your back. Don't worry. If it comes into the rest of Czechoslovakia, but it's really a democratic issue because, it's actually Chamberlain is capitulating the point. Not just like, hey, yeah, you do this, France. We'll sort of help you out a bit. I think it's going to take, wholehearted English. No, if you come in, it will be war. We will be sending our, division back to France if you do this. France would have done it. I believe so. Could be wrong, but that's my reading of history. I know this is going on a long time, but I'm trying to explain my understanding of a very tense time period. So this could erupt into the war in Hitler's mind. It could. He doesn't think it will, but he could. But what he needs to do is make sure the Soviets stay out of it. To make sure the Soviets stay out of it. Now, Hitler, again, is not as stupid as he looks. He knows that if he's losing badly, they're coming into Germany, the Soviets are going to move. The Soviets are going to push. He knows that. He's not an idiot. He may be delusional, especially at the end, but he's not an idiot. So he sees that as the biggest concern is the two-front war. So he believes, and as it turns out he was right, he could create a treaty with Stalin that would keep Stalin out of the war. Now, of course, Hitler breaks the treaty and goes to war, and I do think the Soviets were preparing for war, but I think Stalin is an opportunist, not so much a gambler, but an opportunist. I think he's preparing for war. I don't think Stalin was going to go to war unless it looks like a good opportunity. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean that he's going to go to war with Germany? No, it's from the perspective of Moscow. He's sitting in freaking Moscow or Leningrad or wherever it may be, but he's sitting over here and looking out at the world. Does it look like Germany's large and in charge and just having, submarines and bombers flying around? Yeah, he's probably not going to go to war. Does it look like Italy's collapsing because the British have finally, even without the Americans, have finally pushed into here? Or Japan has declared war on the Americans and attacked Pearl Harbor, and America, even without, because I think FDR was going to come into that war at that point, whether the Germans are at war with the Soviets or not. So if the Americans come into the war, in the early days, no, he's not going to come to war because the Americans are pathetic in the early days. They're getting overrun in the Pacific, and it's going to take them a long time to build up and really be able to do anything. Well, yeah, once they're landing in Sicily, because I do believe the Anglo-American forces are going to defeat German forces because Germany will not see it as even without a will not see the importance of the theater. Let's put it that way. Even without a Soviet war, they might. Now, I of course play it seeing the importance, playing the game and secure the Mediterranean, but and we can see this in that Hitler's all, getting ready for a Soviet war and wants to send Rommel down here, just sort of like, just sort of protect this area, just sort of keep this from completely collapsing. because once it does, then of course they might get pesky and do something else. And of course, they've had to intervene in Greece already. So, it's just to keep the Italians from collapsing and, intervening in Greece. They're not really doing much more than that. That's just pesky stuff. We're getting ready for the real war. So I don't see them really putting the focus on securing the Mediterranean enough that's going to keep the Anglo-American forces out. So with things doing well for the Anglo-American forces, yeah, I think Stalin will invade. I don't see it any other way. I really don't. I really believe all the people, because Stalin is getting ready for an invasion. Stalin is trying to revamp his army after the chaos and defeat, basically, in Finland. He realizes things are really, really bad. And he realizes, after the Winter War, his army is not an army that's prepared to take on Germany. Not that it's necessarily going to lose, but it's just not prepared to do it. I mean, you can still, because I think everybody realizes that had the Winter War been the Summer War, they would have gotten Finland. I think it just, now it might have been a tough fight for them. It might have been, oh shit, this was a lot harder than we thought. But they would have gotten it, and they would have just occupied all of Finland. And it would have just been the, Finnish Republic of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, or the Soviet Republic of Finland, or whatever it would have been as part of the Greater Union. So it just would have been absorbed back in to the Greater Soviet Empire. But they really effed it up and went in winter and really effed it up. So Stalin is realizing this. So Stalin, I don't think is planning, well, obviously didn't do it in 1940. I do not think he's planning a 1941 invasion of, Western Europe or into Europe to the west. But I think he's looking forward to the idea that he has to be ready for a war, defensive or offensive, and I definitely think there's enough evidence that it wasn't just going to be a defensive war that he was preparing for. But I don't think it was ever in the idea that we've cast the die. It's just waiting for the preparations to be complete, and then we're attacking. I think it's Stalin the opportunist, where Hitler the gambler. Okay, so Hitler needs to have this pack because he believes, and I think rightly so, that if he doesn't have this, he's going to face the serious potential, maybe even a likelihood of a two-front war. And so by Stalin, Stalin already, because don't tell me about buffer zones, because we already have a buffer zone. Poland is a freaking buffer zone. The Baltic states, Finland, are buffer zones. We can see the technology of the time. No one's really going to. Yes, I know about up here in Murmansk, the and the Archangel sort of port invasions during World War I to secure the supplies that they'd sent the Russians after the Russian Revolution. But those are just little little expeditionary stuff to sort of secure some areas and maybe help out some whites in their fights with the Reds. But no one's going to invade the Soviet Union, around up here, as its main line of invasion. So Germany isn't going to be sending its panzers up through here or something. So Finland is working as a buffer zone, whether from Sweden or from Germany sending in, its panzers through Finland. The Baltic states, so long as they're independent, they're working as a buffer zone. Romania, it wants to be on France's side, of course, but which might not be a buffer zone if you're looking at a war with the West, but still, it is sort of a buffer zone. So he's not looking for a buffer zone. He has that. He's looking for territorial aggression. And he's going to do that. And to the best of my knowledge, again, to the best of my knowledge, he's gaining nothing significant from getting these states. He's not gaining some special industrial capability. He's not gaining some special resource ability, like, oh, well, this is the only place to get, unobtainium that we need to build our tanks with. It isn't something to that scale. Yeah, I know the nickel up in Finland, up in Petsamo, or however you say. Petsamo up there is very important, but but really it's not something like a resource. It's not like he needs oil or something like that. So it's not industrial capacity. It's not oil. And yeah, there's population here, though this is the sort of unpopulated part of Poland. There is population here, but on the Soviet scale or the Russian scale, however you want to call it, please do note sometimes I'm referring to Russia as the territory or Soviet Union as a state, political entity. But on the Russian or Soviet scale, the population that he gains isn't like filling legions of troops that he needs or workers that he needs. And he definitely wants to kill off all the intellectuals that exist in those areas. That's why he kills off the officers of the Polish army that fall into his hands, or the great bulk of them, at the Katyn forest. I mean, hell, Hitler's willing to work them to death. Stalin's so afraid of him, he just wants to massacre him and not even send him to a gulag to, be useful. That's how afraid of him he is. So he's afraid of the intellectuals. And the intellectuals either get killed or sent off to the gulags. At least those that aren't very quickly on board with the Soviet program, as it were. So, yeah, what is he getting out of this? He already has the buffer zone. He doesn't need that. He wants territorial aggression. And he does that, and that is what allows Hitler to attack him. I do not believe Hitler would have invaded Poland in 1939, 1940, up through to the end of 1940, if Stalin had said, "Niet. If you go after Poland, that would risk a war with us." Whether he would have, how he would have taken. Notice I said risk. I used that word. It would risk a war with us. Because it's also risking a war with the French and the British. I don't think Hitler's going to take the sort of double risk. Let alone whether if they said they would have, moved into Poland and pushed the Germans back out. Because they could have done that and still kept Eastern Poland. I mean, you can go and tell the Germans to F off and don't you dare do it. And then when they do it, play Polish liberation music as your tanks drive in, and just tell without the Ribbentrop-Molotov Pact, tell them we're coming to your aid. We're going to, push the Germans back out, and oh, oops, we're annexing this part of your country. Oh, but we'll give you, East Prussia. We'll give you maybe a little bit of territory over here, and oh, well, we're going to keep some, peacekeeping forces along the new German border. Basically sort of what happens after World War II. So yeah, they could have done that, but Stalin wants his aggression, and so that is what allows Hitler to start the war that ends up invading the Soviet Union. That's sort of the lesson. I'm not so much the details. You could read the details of here or on Wikipedia or in a real book, but the lesson is short-sightedness. You know, short-sightedness gains for long-sightedness losses. And again, I come back over this little bit of territory right here. Yes, Poles live there. Absolutely. I think mostly it was in the Austro-Hungarian Empire. I'm not absolutely sure about that. But Poles live there. Really, Poland? You couldn't have just gone and said, look, guys, all you Poles here, we'll set you up in new housing, farms, whatever. If you want to move to Poland, you want to get out of this Czech area, any of the other Polish speaking people want to come to Poland, come on home. Done an alliance with with Czechoslovakia for a anti-German alliance, but no. 13 traded away, 90 coming in, and we don't even have that. Oh man, we need more steel. I know I went long on the Ribbentrop-Molotov pact. I know this is the quick playthrough. It doesn't look like these guys are going to be very much ready for an invasion of Poland. I think Gross Deutschland was part of it. I'm not absolutely sure, though. I'm sorry, I don't keep orders of battle in my head. Landing craft, finally. Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, this is I think it's a one and done. Let's just check it and make sure. Nope, it isn't. But we're going to stop it just because I don't like. It doesn't hurt to do in the red, but I just want to think everything we're actually researching is actually being researched. I know there is red now, no problem. But, and it does allow us to do some of these other technologies that are doable now, but I don't worry about that. It's just that we can now, and we need to now build some of these so that we can go in after Norway. Let's see, these will be done in February. Well, let's, don't know how much they'll carry, but let's do another 2. That's another reason why I often wait. I'll just come here with this until a little bit later to start the war. Is to be ready to invade Norway also fairly quickly. Because mostly, other than let's give him a divisional commander. Other than some air assets or something, I really don't use the same assets going into I don't know. Just trying to find an appropriate commander. Okay, you'll do, I guess. Well, we can send them up here into Norway or into Denmark. I normally don't use the same troops going here as I would going down here, so it's normally something I can do all at once. And I look at things, and I really have not been following it closely, but like the recent Russian buildup on the Ukrainian border. What is that for? Why are they doing that? The U.S. was going to send ships, and then Putin talks to his buddy Biden, because Putin and Biden are buddies. I don't know. Maybe they probably hate each other. That's BS. But just talks to Biden, and Biden, oh, okay, no, we won't send any fleet units or any more fleet units. I don't know if there's any to the Black Sea. Because the Democrats really only want a war with the Russians when it's Trump, because they want Trump to get into a shooting match with Russia. They don't think it's going to be like nuclear war. They just think it's going to be like a few ships sunk and a few hundred sailors killed, or whatever it might be, and make Trump look bad. So they were trying, in my opinion, they were really trying to hurt American-Russian relations over bad interactions, bad Russian stuff. I almost said Soviet, with the Ukraine and other things. I'm not saying that there isn't reason to be upset with the Russians. There absolutely is. It's just, are we really going to go to war over it, even a localized war? Because there's things we could be doing other than that, like sending weaponry that Obama wasn't going to do, but Trump would do to Ukraine. And so that would not likely get us into an actual shooting. We have learned that Paraguay, oh goody, Paraguay. There we go. We're safe now that Paraguay joins our alliance, if it does. We're all good now. Comes in. And I know there's pipelines and oil and all kinds of stuff that are going on with Russia and Syria, with America reoccupying into here, going to stay an extra 6 months at least in Afghanistan, various things. Remember, Trump was breaking out peace all over the place, signing peace treaties everywhere. But no, they're coming back to the war front. I don't know. I guess I hope some people hear what I say about these short-term situations, and then somehow I don't know if the right term is stupid enough or whatever, and go into like their country's State Department or Foreign Ministry or whatever, and remember, not the details of whatever treaty or Brest-Litovsk or Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact or whatever, but just the lessons from it, to go, if we give Putin permission to come into here, that might mean he goes to war with these people over there that might blow the whole world up. So maybe we shouldn't do it. Maybe when, Putin comes to whoever then will be the ruler of Germany, going, hey, yeah, you want to redivide up Poland again? They'll go, no, thank you. Airborne unit training advance. Okay, we're stopping it because we're stopping all these extras. Well, it may be one I want to keep going, but we're still stopping it because we're stopping the extras. Okay, let's take a quick look. What is the weather like? Probably not too bad this September. Well, I think we're going to end this episode here. I'm thinking about starting the war the next episode. At nearly the beginning. So, come back for the next episode if you want to see how well I can do against Poland. Thanks so much, everyone. See you next time for even more Hearts of Iron.